Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the May edition of Law Chat 2021. I'm Simon Tupman, your host, and this edition is brought to you in association with Moore Markhams, accountants and advisors, providing specialist financial advice and services to the legal profession. This month, I'm delighted to be joined by Matt Farrington from Juno Legal down in Wellington. And Matt is a practicing lawyer and a legal technologist. He helps lawyers design and implement systems in order to make legal services more efficient, more effective, and more enjoyable. As part of his practicing career, he also includes information communication and technology contracting, IP licensing and data protection and privacy law, amongst his many services. And today, Matt is joining us to talk about legal tech, in other words, technology for lawyers and law firms, a subject that I'm sure is shrouded in mystique for a lot of practitioners. Matt to the rescue. Good afternoon, Matt. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, thank you for having me, Simon.
Listen, where do we start? I mean, so often do we start in the middle of a Richard Susskind book and think, oh shit, this is all too difficult? Or do we talk to Matt Farrington and say, okay, Matt, just lay out the legal landscape for us, or the technology landscape as it might apply for law firms? So over to you.
Yeah, well, look, the Richard Susskind approach is an interesting one. I guess it depends which one of his books you start with as to whether we're all doomed or whether we're all fine. I guess from my perspective, one of the things I emphasize when I'm working with people is let's say the difference between legal tech proper and what I've started to call lawyer tech or tools and technologies for lawyers. And so I've even prepared a slide for this, which hopefully everyone can see. And what I've done here on the slide is to distinguish between what you can distinguish between legal operations and legal services. So legal services being actually giving legal advice, and legal operations being all the stuff that goes around the legal advice, the filing, the client management, the billing, and all those sorts of things. But then I think you can also break it down further between, let's say, a client-facing tool and a lawyer-facing tool. And that leads us to this graph here, where you can see some different matrices. And so for me, let's say the perfect example of the lawyer-facing legal operations tool is everyone's favorite, the time recording and practice management system. The client will never see it. You don't actually use it to necessarily give any legal advice, any legal services, but it's what makes your firm run. Now, contrast that with let's say, the other quadrant, the client-facing legal services. And this is where I think a lot of us get hung up on the idea of legal tech and AI and chatbots, and is this going to eat our lunch? Are we all going to be replaced? And you kind of think about, well, someone sits down and interacts with a computer instead of interacting with a lawyer. And whether that be Q&A, going and selecting from a menu and downloading the document, or answering some questions and spitting out a document on an automated basis. And so that's let's say the legal services client facing, but you can take other approaches to that as well. And I would actually say, well, document automation can also be a lawyer facing tool. And sometimes in that context, it's called document assembly. And it could actually be the same tool, but the way it's set up and configured is very different depending on whether a lawyer is consuming it. Are you going to use legal jargon, legal shorthand, the kind of the power user, versus more, let's say, a guided option or a self-service option, which would be the client-facing option. And there are a whole lot of other tools and technologies you can map onto this graph, and I actually ran out of space, so I didn't include them all. But what I guess I'd say is this top left-hand quadrant, the highlighted quadrant there, the client-facing legal services, are really what a lot of people think of when they say legal tech. The chatbots, the AI, things like that. And I guess what I want to emphasize is I actually think the other three quadrants are just as important. And these are what I call the lawyer tech options. And so tools and technologies for lawyers, not necessarily to give legal services, not necessarily client-facing, may entirely be internal. But if you're starting from nothing or you're not really sure where to start, don't start with legal tech, start with lawyer tech. And so I look at I look at some examples of people I've worked with that have had some great wins from off the shelf technology. Like I can book my cat into the vet online. I can book a plumber online. I can book a haircut online. Can I book an appointment with my lawyer online? No, I probably have to phone them up or send them an email. I think, look, COVID obviously had a lot of problems with it, but I've always been a big fan of video conferencing and more flexible working arrangements. Do you actually need to fly up to Auckland for this meeting? Or can we do a video conference? And this was actually the kick up the bum for some lawyers, I think, to start learning how to use these tools. And so I guess this kind of exercise about mapping what it is you've already got, what it is you already do. Hey, look, there's a quadrant we don't have anything in. That can be a useful starting point. But I think probably the useful point to remember is I kind of liken lawyers to brides and grooms in this respect. If you go to a florist and say the flowers are a wedding, well, watch the price triple. If you go to an IT vendor and say it's for a law firm, again, watch the price triple. And there are some definite differences about what lawyers do compared to everyone else in that legal tech quadrant. But a lot of what lawyers do are just like what other professional service firms do in those other quadrants. Do you need a legal services online booking tool, or do you just need an online booking tool? Do you need a legal social management platform or a legal CRM? No, you just need a social media platform or a CRM tool. And so I guess if I see there are some areas where the technology may replace some of the things that lawyers used to do, but there are a whole lot of areas where that's not a bad thing. I don't want to do my filing manually. I don't want to manually have to manage my calendar. And so in that sense, the tools can be enabling. And just because we're lawyers doesn't mean that we should be scared of those things. And then I'd actually also say these are the easier ones to start with. By all means, your client-facing legal service, I want to do legal tech. My client-facing legal services, you have to have that perfect. You don't want to be, taking chances and cutting corners. Whereas for the others, well, look, if it's all internal facing, it may not matter if it's not quite perfect. Or if in actual fact, it's just an online booking system. Again, evaluate the tools that are available and pick the best match, but it doesn't necessarily have to be a perfect match. And so that's, I guess, my starting point is this kind of mapping exercise to figure out what we haven't done, but what we'd like the technology to do.
And as part of that analysis, if you like, how many of those things that you put up on that matrix would you regard as being essential in today's market? I mean, you might say that when it comes to legal services tech, you've got to be very client-facing, and that might be a mark of the extent to which you are client-centric, rather. Mm. But in terms of going through that list and ticking the box and say, we've got this, but we haven't got that, other things there that you've put up that you think are essential for people starting out on this route and looking to upgrade or just get up with the state of play?
So I'd very much say that is a horses for courses one. If you are a litigation firm, any discovery tool that helps you prepare your bundles for court documents and discovery exercises and comply with the High Court rules, that is almost an essential. For me, I haven't been in a courtroom since I was admitted, so that's clearly not an essential. That's clearly not an essential tool. Do you have let's say a wide client base? I'm a conveyancing solicitor, and I'll see someone every 5 years when they buy and sell a house and to update their will. Well, something like an online booking system might be great. Make it easy for people to come and book. Versus maybe, well, look, I've got a relatively few number of clients, but I keep in touch with them a lot. They may prefer emailing. Hey, I don't want to go log into a booking system. I just want to, pick up the phone like I'm used to. So I really think it depends on the nature of your practice and what you're trying to achieve and how you want to interact with your clients. I guess I would definitely say For lawyers, I think good information management tools are essential. I know I certainly don't want to start with a clean piece of paper and draft every contract from scratch. I'm always going to take my precedents and my templates. And so I think that's really important. A good filing system is probably the other one. We all get overwhelmed with emails, and so a good way of managing, hey, this is, the inbox is a to-do list. Marking things as unread only takes you so far. And so a good way of, let's say, triaging your inbox, managing them, hey, I can put that away. I don't need to look at that anymore, but I do need to save it for future reference. So that traditional lawyer answer, I'm sorry, Simon, it depends.
It depends. Oh, well, that's a fair answer. Interesting point, though. To what extent do you think some law firms already have these tools at their disposal, wrapped up in their practice management software system or Microsoft 360, but they're not actually using them?
Yeah, that's an excellent point. And so one of the first things I do on any of this type of engagement is to ask, well, what suite are you on? So certainly Office 365 is getting more and more traction. More and more firms are on Office 365. There are a few on Google Workplace. But both of those subscription services offer great value if you're just using it to manage email and get access to word processing. They offer incredible value if you use even a tenth of the other tools that are available to you. And so in both, it's sometimes called the waffle button or the dial pad, top left, top right-hand corner. There's a way of clicking through to the other apps you've already subscribed to. I'm surprised at the number of lawyers who have never clicked that button and never even figured out what's available to you. And so again, this is what I would say a great example of lawyer tech, so the tools and technologies for lawyers. You're not necessarily using it to provide legal services, but let's say Microsoft Planner is a fantastic Kanban task management board, and Google Drive has some fantastic opportunities to manage your information. And so I definitely, there's kind of an IT aphorism that you should always buy before you build. So in the sense that if something already exists, just buy it. Don't try and recreate it yourself. I'd add before that, use the things you're already paying for before you go shopping for something new. And so if you are on these types of platforms, explore the functionality that's available to you and see if that's something that could work for particular problems. They're all pretty good about, you click on it the first time, they'll give you an introduction, but even just Googling or YouTubing, Microsoft Planner will give you an overview on how to use it, and it'll just cost you 5 minutes of time to watch it. Definitely for a lot of firms, the centerpiece of their IT stack is their practice management solution. And so we're kind of living in an age where sort of 20, 30 years ago, you picked a solution and that was your solution. Do you want the IBM or the Oracle solution? We're now in an age where of let's say granular, best of breed microservices. So I need a tool to do this, and I'm going to pick the best tools to do it. And then you integrate it with the other tools that you've already got. And so definitely, if you are on any of the big practice management solutions, most of them have integrations with other tools. Certainly, Xero is getting more and more common among the law firms I work with, and Xero has a great marketplace, literally of apps that add on things to your Xero platform. And so that's a great way of expanding its functionality. Hey, look, I've looked at all the tools I'm already paying for. None of them quite do it. I do want another tool, but I don't want to have to manually rekey information between the two or run two parallel systems. I want these two systems to talk to each other, to find two that like either already talk to each other or to use a third-party integration service. So the likes of Zapier, Power Apps, and Integromat, there are a few.
Interesting. For those also, I'm thinking who are saying, okay, I haven't made the best use of the software that I've currently got, but if I do need to buy some add-ons, just wondering about the sort of purchasing price these days. I mean, I guess in terms of a percentage, are you able to sort of give ballpark figures of, what firms are investing in, or is it back to it depends?
Well, I think it's back to it depends a little bit, because certainly I know, I think there is a view among lawyers that everyone else has this sorted and it's just me or it's just my firm that's struggling. And I work a lot with, small firms, big firms, and in-house. And everyone seems to, oh, you won't believe how bad our filing system is, or it's just a disaster. I'm sure everyone else has got this stuff sorted. But it is genuinely a case of the emperor has no clothes. Everyone seems to think everyone else has this sorted, and there are very, very few that have this sorted. The challenges are certainly different. The challenges of a 200 lawyer firm versus a 2-person firm are very, very different. And a lot of the your question was about pricing, and I guess the joy of a lot of these, let's say, these discrete cloud services that you integrate with other things, is you're not necessarily up for much upfront cost. They either offer a free trial for you to see how it works, or let's say a relatively low per user subscription. So if you're in a small firm and everyone wants to use this, well, look, you may be up for $10 a lawyer a month, $20 a lawyer a month. And yeah, look, that will add up, but it gives you a real opportunity to try these things and see if they're going to work. What people are spending, I guess I would say possibly not enough. And definitely there are people that are going all in on this. They're setting up, some big firms are setting up wholly owned subsidiaries. In the in-house profession, the idea of the legal operations professional is becoming a thing where, hey, we don't just have a practice manager who's going to run the business, turn the crank on the business as usual machine. We're going to have a legal operations person designed to look at these systems. How do we improve them? Where do we roll out new things? But that's probably still the minority in New Zealand. It's definitely becoming a much bigger thing internationally. But I really guess the biggest commitment is not necessarily the money, it's the time. Because we're all busy working on the urgent. We all know this business improvement stuff is important, but we never quite find the time to do it. And so one of the things I've found extremely effective is, again, I will steal blatantly from my IT startup friends, the idea of a hackathon. Right, I'm going to take my firm or my team, I'm going to lock them in a room for a day. We're going to really work out what it is we do well and what we do badly. I've got, we've got some ideas about the tools that we could use. Hey, look, this tool has worked for a guy I know, or, Matt on the webinar said to start here. Let's have a look at this. We're going to see how we can set it up and configure it and see how that works. And then, even trying it during your full day hackathon, you can get some surprising insights in the course of a day where people are forced to engage with it, as opposed to, oh yeah, well, I asked our IT guy and he installed this, but I got busy and sort of 6 weeks went by, and then I'd forgotten my login. And then by the time he gave me my login, another 6 weeks had gone by, and then I gave him some feedback, and then it all just sort of, withered on the vine, and I've been paying for it for a year and I haven't even opened it once. That's not an unusual story. And so the idea to take a day, sit down, figure out, pick one thing we're going to try and improve. Hey, what's our client onboarding process like? I really hate the fact that we have to get scanned passports, or people have to drop stuff in. Or, hey, we're going to trial, an online client survey, the initial triage. Hey, it's a property conveyance. I'm always going to need this information from you, and I'm going to need you to bring this information with me. I'm going to give you that online. You can figure it out, and then when we come in, we can have a really productive meeting. I'm a contract lawyer, and agreements are always expiring. I could actually offer real value to my clients by sending them an email automatically saying, hey, that contract I did for you a couple of years back, it's due to expire. Would you like my help in renewing it? And so bite off a small chunk, see how that works. And Simon, you picked on my 3 E's. A tool is good and should be continued with it. If it makes you more efficient, can you do it faster? And that's a lot of lawyers looking at tech just look at the speed dynamic. And it is important, but it's not necessarily the be all and end all. Does it make you more effective? Does it make you a better lawyer? Does it improve the quality of the legal services? And definitely in that sense, there are some things machines do better than humans. Hey, find and replace all is better than me manually going through a document and manually making changes. The machine is far more likely to find them than I am. But better still is to program a really short script, which may only take 10 minutes, I'll input this data once and it'll replace it in all the places it needs to go. No questions asked. Doesn't matter if there's some weird formatting or I spelt one of them wrong. And then my third E is, does it make the practice of law more enjoyable? And fundamentally, I quite like being a lawyer. I quite like giving legal services. The things I don't like doing are the file management, time recording, billing, narrations, and things like that. And so there are definite tools out there focused more in that area, that what I call the operations side of things, to help make that easier, take away that pain, and make it easier for lawyers to do the legal services bit. And I think that's where, like, I take a little bit of issue with some of Richard Susskind's points that we're all doomed. Like, I actually think lawyers are good at providing legal services, and we can do it better if we're freed up from some of the other things that we don't like doing, but that goes part and parcel with providing those legal services.
In defense of Richard Susskind, I remember him telling a story. I've heard him tell it live and maybe even on a previous Law Chat, when back in 1995, when he was predicting about the use of technology in legal services and how it would change the landscape, he was met with objection by one lawyer who threatened to report him to the Law Society, suggesting that one day all lawyers would communicate via email. Now, that to me suggests that, you know, the degree of conservatism amongst the legal profession across the world has for many years been well noted, and that perhaps that conservatism has acted as a barrier in terms of the uptake of technology in law firms. Might you agree with that?
So it's interesting you say that. And so, look, I think there is something to that. So an example that's come up recently. I'm a graduate of Victoria University Law School, and for those that don't know, Victoria University recently had a very high-profile "Shall we change our name from Victoria University to the University of Wellington?" And the people leading the charge against this proposal were graduates of the law school, not any of the other schools, and the law faculty. And the language being used was the language of grief. People were angry and they were in denial. And so I definitely think there is an aspect to that lawyers are, let's say, change resistant. But I tend to think of changes as two sorts of changes. And some of this comes from Clayton Christensen's work about sustaining and disruptive innovations, where there are changes that enhance what you're already doing, and there are changes or tools that change the way you're doing things. And so if you think, lawyers were pretty quick to embrace things like the typewriter, the word processor, the fax machine, and email, because it was fundamentally, someone would ask us a question, we'd think about it for a while, we'd write down an answer, and then we'd dispatch it to them. And so all of those changes are fundamentally, it was the same way of working. It might have been a mixed blessing. Certainly some of the turnaround times some of my clients expect by email can be quite distracting, but fundamentally it didn't change the way we worked. And now, whereas you look at disruptive innovations, oh, look, we're not going to need lawyers anymore. We're going to just use AI and or it'll all be self-help and no one needs to do any of this. And that is definitely a difficult area and needs to be negotiated. Look, access to justice is a problem. And would it be better to put up some New Zealand templates for free that, look, aren't a great starting point, but if someone's not going to pay a lawyer, they're going to Google it anyway. And, you may start with some kind of weird US template or something along those lines. So in that sense, this again, I'll hark back to my legal tech versus lawyer tech point. The lawyer tech's things people should be shopping for initially should enhance your ability to provide legal services the way you want to provide legal services. I don't like filling out timesheets. I don't like filling out billing reports manually. I've invested in a tool that does a lot of that stuff on an automatic basis. I'm not an especially good coder, but I do dabble. My high point of my coding career is an automated feature of Word to add bullet point, to add semicolon, 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 and full stop automatically. Because I'm terrible at proofreading. I'm just not very good at it. I can't proofread my own things. I don't enjoy it. But the machine's quite good at it. And if I push a button, the machine will say, all right, you haven't formatted that right. You've got to go fix it up. And so, we use spell check, we use grammar check, things like that. in Professor Christensen's words, sustaining innovations. They help people who are already in the role do what they're doing. And that's where I put a lot of this legal tech, the lawyer tech stuff as things to make the practice of law more enjoyable, more efficient, more enjoyable, and more effective, as opposed to fundamentally changing what it is lawyers are doing.
Yeah. A quick question for you. I mean, we're having this conversation here in New Zealand, and many of the viewers and listeners are from Australasia, New Zealand, Australia, but we also have people tuning into Law Chat from further afield as well. Do you have an impression in terms of which countries might be ahead in terms of lawyer tech?
Obviously a country represents a broad sample size. Definitely the consensus among, let's say, bigger firms and in-house teams, which I think, look, they've got the benefit of scale, but they've got the burden of often, let's say, a bit more bureaucracy. They're not nearly as nimble as the smaller firms. The United States, North America, United States and Canada is probably 5 years of Australia and the UK, which is 5 years ahead of us. So we're probably as much as a decade behind the leading in-house and large firms in the US. Whereas definitely I think that, let's say, the smaller, more nimble firms cover a much broader range. There are some absolutely fantastic tools out there designed for smaller firms. So Clio is CLIO, is probably the leading practice management suite in North America, and very much started by targeting small firms. It more or less does everything a small firm needs to do out of the box. And so in that sense, it's really quite enabling, because a small firm can now set up and have the similar sorts of tools and technologies available to a big firm for a monthly subscription. You don't need that scale to move away from, look, it's a notebook I bought from the local store and I've cobbled together this myself. I should say I'm not affiliated with any technology provider. It's just a tool I've seen and think it works really well. It may not work for everyone, but it is, let's say, that disruption from the bottom up rather than a tool designed for the big firms that maybe get scaled back.
So given Moore's law, which talks about the rate of growth doubling every year, how long do you think it will be before New Zealand catches up with the rest of the world?
Well, and it's certainly starting to, and there are tech startups in New Zealand targeted at New Zealand specific requirements. So certainly there are a lot of, for example, AML KYC providers, because this is definitely something lawyers don't want to do. We don't want to have to deal with this. It's an absolute pain. If there is a way of automating this and we don't have to do it manually, this is a fantastic example. And there are New Zealand providers set up to deal with the New Zealand specific rules. And so, look, that I think is a fantastic outcome. That's very much driven by an externality. Hey, the law has changed. What are we going to do about it? I do think we're probably not quite at the tipping point yet, but I think we are rapidly approaching where, like your example about Richard Susskind and email, around 1995, not all lawyers had an email address. I think by 2000, probably everyone did. I suspect we're coming up close to this now, where every lawyer is going to have to think about, hey, what are the tools and technologies I use, and at least have, let's say, an innovation strategy. Hey, these are our key tools. These are the ones we keep an eye on, and we're always looking for new and better ways of working. This is how we want to service our clients. This is how we want to work internally. Because certainly, pace of change is increasing. You can't now go shopping once. Oh, we're just going to buy the Thomson Reuters solution and that'll do us for the next 20 years. Very much a narrower window than that. And it might be, look, you do keep the Thomson Reuters solution for the next 20 years, but it will be multiple versions of the solution that's available.
Wow, legal tech in half an hour. Hasn't time flown by? Look, thank you so much for that, and some really interesting points of view too about the future and where this might be going, and the pace at which it might be developing too. I'd love to continue this discussion for at least another half an hour, but time won't permit because Law Chat is restricted to about 30 minutes each month. But I'd just like to thank you, Matt, for coming on today and sharing your thoughts. And if people are interested in writing to you, not that you necessarily want an avalanche of fan mail, but you might do. But if they do, how can they get hold of you?
So you can look me up on junolegal.com or on LinkedIn. I'm LinkedIn /Matthew Farrington. And do feel free to get in touch. I just want to say thank you to Simon for having me, and thank you to the audience for listening to me. I hope there was a kernel or two in there that can be useful, and I really do urge people to start thinking about the way they use technology in their legal practices. It doesn't necessarily mean a fundamental change to what you've always done previously.
Great message, Matt. Thank you so much for joining us today. I look forward to catching up with you again before too long. But for now, to all our viewers and listeners joining us from wherever you may be in the world, thanks for joining Law Chat this month. I'll be back next month with another chat. But until then, stay safe, stay healthy, and we'll see you next month. Bye for now.